Für meine deutsche Freunde, es tut mir leid, dass mein Deutsch so schlecht ist, but we're speaking English today anyway, so I'm saved from my own embarrassment. So my relationship with Lufthansa goes back to a DLD conference in Munich, probably about, I don't know, Torsten, 7 years ago, and they had an essay contest to win 2 free tickets anywhere Lufthansa flies. And I thought I had a damn good idea, and I wrote my essay, and I lost. And there were only 2 entries in the contest, and I lost. Nonetheless, I got a friend in Torsten Windgettner, and thank you, Torsten, for having me here, and in Lufthansa. And through that, I've had the opportunity to have a lot of conversations about Lufthansa and about airlines and innovation and brainstorming that at the Innovation Hub in Berlin. So I think that's why I'm here. I'm trying to combine the perspective of media and how we're screwed in this digital world, and how we're disrupted, and how other industries are disrupted in the case of an airline, and try to pull that together. So I don't know if it'll work or not, but I'll try. So I think that Germany gave birth to the world's first technology entrepreneur, and that was Gutenberg. And I've become a Gutenberg groupie. I've taken pilgrimages to the Gutenberg Museum in Mainz, and if you haven't done it, I recommend that you go see the Gutenberg Bible in its original form. And it's important, I think, to see the timeline that we're really on in innovation in the internet age. As far as I can tell, we're at about the year 1475 in Gutenberg years. Let me explain that. If you figure that Gutenberg invented the printing in about 1450, and the book didn't really take on the shape we know now until about 50 years later, the first newspaper was not invented until the year 1605. That was a full century and a half before anyone thought to use this thing Gutenberg had been invented to just tell people what's going on in the world. A full century and a half. So it's by that reckoning that I figure we're about 25 years away from the invention of the commercial web that we know it. Thank you, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. And that says we're in the year 1475. Keep in mind also that Martin Luther, who we're celebrating this year, was not born until 1483. So by that reckoning, perhaps our Martin Luther, our great disruptor and innovator, isn't even born yet. That is to say that the change we're undergoing right now is radical, is millennial, is huge, and we think it's happening very quickly. I actually think it's happening very slowly, and we're just beginning. This is a book that has influenced me about an institutional revolution that occurred centuries ago in this process of change that Gutenberg started. I think we're going through that again. I think what we're seeing in the world right now is a revolution against many institutions that exist. Media, political parties, governments perhaps, universities. All these institutions are highly challenged. And so it's not just about the simple disruption we've heard about, it's about something much more profound that I think is going on in our society. And it certainly has affected us in media very much. So I want to go through a few things that talk about what we do about that disruption. That book argued that measurement made many institutions obsolete. That is to say that once you could have latitude and longitude and know when a boat was where it was in the world at the right time, it made other institutions that were invented to make up for that lack of measurement obsolete. Well, now we can do so much more than just measure people. Now we can listen to people. They can talk to us in new ways. We can talk with them. We have conversations that are changing the world fundamentally. So with that in mind, I want to go through just a few implications, I think, that some of which cross over media and even airlines. One, appropriate for being here today around a worldwide airline, is that I think that, to the contrary of what we're seeing in the world, we must stay global. What we're seeing happen in the United States right now is an effort to pull back in and become more national. And by the way, I suppose I should say right here and right now, as an American, I apologize to all of you in the world for bringing you Donald Trump. Believe me, it hurts us more than it hurts you so far. But I think what we see in this challenge to institutions is that, for example, the nation is challenged as an institution, and that's what brings on the rabid nationalism we see as a last-ditch effort to protect that institution that's challenged. And I think that every institution that gets challenged is going to have this kind of fight back and forth. And the only thing we can do, I believe, is to go around the world, is to meet people, is to spread our connections in more ways than we ever had before. It is more vital than ever to travel the world and to meet people of diverse backgrounds. It is also important, I think, that we reimagine the notion not just of the nation, but also of the tribe. Keep in mind, in the United States, I believe that it was a very small tribe on the so-called alt-right that took over a political party and then took over a nation. Tribalism can be bad, it can be frightening because it concentrates power in odd ways, but tribalism can also be very important. It's about towns and villages and families brought to the world. And now you can connect with people around the world in ways that you simply could not before and find your own tribes. I find that very exciting. Sebastian Junger, a war correspondent, wrote a book about tribalism and about the lure of being part of a tribe. And I think that's part of what we have in the ability now to go and meet people around the world. As a blogger, I'm on a podcast every week called This Week in Google. I was in the airport yesterday after arriving. Somebody stopped me for this silly podcast and said, "Oh, I'm a fan of the podcast." Right? The fact that we can connect, not in mass media ways, but in simple little ways like being on a podcast, just awe-inspiring to me. Protectionism is no strategy for the future. And I think we see this effort to protect, certainly right now in the United States. We see Donald Trump trying to build a wall. We see efforts to protect industries in the United States. We also see that happening here in Europe. I've had arguments with the German media industry over the Leistungsschutzrecht, the ancillary copyright, which is an effort to basically go to war with Google and Facebook. I had the privilege of speaking at the Hub conference in Berlin a few weeks ago, and I do believe that now that America is so challenged, this is the time for European innovation and especially German innovation. I think there are many areas where there can be great innovation, starting with privacy, starting with Datenschutz, starting with how to have trust, as Mr. Spohr said, in a relationship that you have. More openness and transparency. We see it in airlines. Now that I can find out where my plane is, why it's late, what's going on, when I'm going to get there, that empowers us. The more information you give to people, the more that empowers us. Everything we see out here, much of what we see out here, is about giving more information to people, about being more open and transparent. And that, I think, makes us more powerful in the end. As fellow media people, I argue that we are not in the content business. And the notion that we have that we manufacture a product called content is outmoded. It's just as outmoded as an airline saying all we do is get you from point A to point B. We're more than that, and we're less than that. I think that the notion of content is a Gutenberg era idea that doesn't work anymore. I think that journalism is something more than that in terms of helping people improve their lives and their communities. The same with an airline. It does more than get you from one airport to another. The efforts you see out here are efforts to help you all across to do more things. Now, the irony of me saying this is that the essay that I wrote for that DLD contest 6 or 7 years ago that became a chapter in my book, What Would Google Do? I argued in favor of the social airline because I realized that sitting in that aluminum tube are people who know things. When I'm flying to Munich a few days from now, there are people in that airline who know Munich far better than I do. And if I want a recommendation for a restaurant or a hotel or something to do, they're the people who know. And so I argued in my essay some time ago that the airline could capture the knowledge out of the people in that plane and then redistribute it to other people in that plane and had the currency, miles, to reward people for doing that. So that you could, in essence, the airline could become a publisher and a database of information. I thought it was a hell of a good idea and should have won the contest myself, but I didn't. But as I say, I got a book chapter out of it. So I think that if we forget about the notion of producing a product called content, instead think about serving people socially, good things will happen and we'll do a better job. Besides going to DLD, I want to mention there's a conference that I went to the last 2 years in the US called VidCon. Anybody here heard of VidCon? It's the Comic-Con of YouTube. It is 25,000 YouTube fans in one convention center, mostly teenage girls, including my daughter. VidCon is coming to Europe, to Amsterdam for the first time, sometime in the spring. I don't know when, you can look it up. But I found that it changed my view fundamentally of media. It made me see that when my daughter shares a video, she is not saying, this is a very good documentary you should watch for a half an hour, I give it 4 stars. She is saying, this speaks for me. And I think that in the election, we in media lost out on that opportunity to speak with people and to add to their conversations. The fake news factories took over Facebook and created memes and created catchy things that people passed on in their conversations. We in media said, no, we don't do that. We're above that. You have to come to us and read our 1,000-word articles to be informed. Obviously, not enough people did. So rethinking this notion of media, rethinking past what we are as content, to think about how we serve people fundamentally, and then judging our success or failure on whether or not we've helped improve their lives and their communities. So similarly, every other industry has to rethink what it is fundamentally. Look at Detroit and automobile manufacturers and German automobile manufacturers now looking at the face of both Uber and self-driving cars. They become companies to get you from one place to the other. Airlines have thought that way for a while. Other industries are going to have to rethink it as well. So, everything is a service. This is a Lufthansa photo. I love this photo. Everything becomes a service, and service is everything. In our business, in media, I think we have to shift from the idea that we manufacture a product called content or newspapers or magazines or shows. And we have to see that we are a service that helps people do what they want to do and accomplish what they want to do. A company like Lufthansa is in a better shape because it has always seen itself as being a service business. I think that most everything becomes a service. Retail, Amazon, becomes a service. Education should see itself more and more as a service. That ethic and ethos of service becomes critical to every industry in the internet age. Next, what the internet really killed is the mass media business model. And with it, it killed mass media, and with it, it kills the idea of the mass. The idea of the mass is fundamentally insulting to people, right? There's there's a sociologist, Raymond Williams, who said, there are no masses, only ways of seeing people as masses. To call people a mass is to treat them all the same, to put them all in the same seat and see them similarly. What we have to do in the future is to become relevant. And the only way to become relevant is to know you as an individual or a member of a community, not as a faceless member of the mass. That's difficult to do, but I think critical in how we move to the future. And the best way to know someone as an individual is not to give them a questionnaire and not to demand they give you more information. The best way is to make products and services that are more customized to them. So in the media terms, if you make a product for young mothers and young fathers, the people who are going to use that are young mothers and young fathers, and I learned that about you, and I can use that data going forward. In the case of the airlines, when I've talked with Torsten and some of his colleagues about this, knowing that you're on a business trip versus a social trip can make a difference in how you're served. So creating new products that are special for business travelers or for vacation travelers enables you to create a relationship based on that kind of information and data. And I think that there's an opportunity then to change our relationship with our customers. Now, what this also means is we change our job descriptions. In journalism, I've realized that we have to start training product development people in the industry. That's entirely new because we always had the same product. The newspaper was our product for a century, more than a century. Now we have to train people in being able to react and create new products for communities and markets as they go. Similarly, audience development is an entirely new job description that we have in our business around trying to have relationships with people. I think audience development too much now is about bragging and marketing what we do, but these are new titles that I, as a journalism professor, have to worry about training people in. And I'm looking about creating even entirely new degrees in training people for these new jobs. In every single industry, we are bound to lose jobs, of course, with automation, with artificial intelligence, with other technology, but we do create new jobs. We do create new structures and new ways to work. And in the end, as Mr. Spohr said when he was up here, data is where the value is going to be, not to exploit people, but to serve them better. Data is where the value is because that's what enables me to see you as an individual versus you as an individual versus you as an individual and serve you better as a result. And creating products that by their use bring out that data from you is what enables me to serve you better and creates a relationship. That's key in where we go. So we move past content to relevance. It's an obvious point that we're all going to be connected. And what that really means, I think, is that all industries have to become platforms for people to use. That's one of the conversations I've had with the folks at Lufthansa and the Innovation Hub quite a bit, is what does an airline look like as a platform? It's not just a tube with seats, but it's a mechanism by which you can do things. Lufthansa has had a few flights now, the Flying Lab, right? 2 of them, I think, where they put content basically on the plane. The idea of having a special flight to South by Southwest, because Germans love to go to South by Southwest. There's tons there's a whole neighborhood of Austin, I'm now told, that takes over from the German population. So taking people there and doing programming on the way and seeing the plane merely as a mechanism and as a platform to be used. We in media create this as a platform people can use so that they can share information on their own. So the point at the end is that you're used. And it's okay to be used. It's okay to hand power over to people and become less powerful ourselves so that our customers become more powerful. The key skill in all of this is to listen. And a lot of people pay lip service to that and may not mean it, but I've seen more and more. I have 2 new degrees at my journalism school in New York, one in entrepreneurial journalism and one in social journalism. And what I've seen in teaching those courses is that what we have to teach journalists to do more than ever is listen effectively to the public they serve. We don't listen well in truth. What we really do is we go out and have a story that we've already pitched and we go get quotes to fill it in, let's be honest. Similarly, every other industry that has customer service over the years has someone who's paid to listen and nothing gets passed up the ranks. That's not productive for the future. We have to have cultures in companies that listen profoundly. In fact, what I've seen in journalism is that we have to take on the discipline of anthropologists, where before we have an idea of what we want to do for people, we listen to them, we observe them, we understand what their problems are, we empathize with those problems. Indeed, I think perhaps one of the biggest problems in this American election is that media did not empathize with or understand half of America. And the problem wasn't just that we didn't predict the election. The problem was we didn't serve that half of America and we didn't inform them because they didn't trust us. Mr. Spohr is absolutely right that trust is key to all of this. And listening is the first step in trust. The next step is to reflect back what I've heard and make sure I got it accurately. Only then, and only then, can I start to serve you as an individual. So what we're really doing is moving customers up the chain. Now a customer stands at the very end of the chain after we've formulated a product or service, after we've priced it, after we've marketed it, after we've manufactured it, everything, then they have the opportunity to buy it. The more we move the customer up the chain so they have a role in not only the marketing messaging, but also in the formulation of the products, then we're going to make better products. And we can do that only if we listen well and listen effectively. artificial intelligence, I think, is overused as a gimmick for our future. But when you see the kind of data that exists out here, the only way to manage that data is through intelligent systems. And I've seen more and more that I think that we in journalism oversimplify the world. That everything we do is reductive. We reduce complex stories to narratives, or to data visualizations, or to opinion polls, or to fact-checking, which is black and white. It's only through having ways to build more complex views of the world that we can understand the world better and serve the world better. And I think we can learn things from companies like this that have very complex data they have to deal with every day, and in that process, they can learn. So I've started to understand artificial intelligence not just as a gimmick to say I'm going to take something highly complex and learn it, but it really says that every company itself is a learning network and a metaphor for the system. What you're trying to do is draw out the knowledge from all the people in the company about what's happening and all the customers in the company so that you can predict their needs and act upon them better. That's what goes on here. That's what we're seeing happen here. It's what we have to also learn how to do, I think, in journalism, so we don't reduce the world to two colors, to red and blue. We don't reduce things to oversimplification. And finally, questions often asked in this industry is around the notion of the middleman. In travel, you've seen the travel agent all but replaced, and you have companies come along like in the US, Trivago now, that doesn't really do much, but takes an inefficient system of pricing and adds a layer onto it to say, I can get you a better price, and thus I can get a piece of that price when I sell it to you. There's no real reason for them to exist. I think that the internet kills most middlemen. But clearly then there are new middlemen who rise up. And we end up having the middlemen of Facebook and Google. And we in media tend to see those middlemen as enemies because we think that they've taken our business. They've taken our content, they've taken our customers and our advertisers. I don't think so. I don't think that Facebook is a media company. I think that it is something new. If we call it a media company and try to put it in that box, I think that we're missing the trees for the forest. We're missing the 1.5 billion people who are there. Facebook is a connection company. It connects people with each other. And we have no choice but to work through Facebook. In the fake news epidemic in the US, we in media should have made our own memes, our own little boxes with facts in it that people could have passed around in their own conversations. We thought we were above that. So the key to everything I've tried to say today is that the simple lesson that comes out of the net and out of what we need is that we are all in the relationship business. And that itself sounds and frankly is trite, but it's true that unless we develop our own direct relationships with people as individuals and members of communities, we will lose out to those middlemen because they'll come in and create efficiencies where we're inefficient in that. The opportunity is to know people as individuals, to gain their trust by listening to them, by serving them better, and by understanding them well. These are lessons that absolutely every industry today must do and every institution must do, including political parties and governments. And so as I try to just pull together these odd strands of here's media people and there's an airline, and what's the internet do to us, I think it's as simple as this. The internet enables us to create direct relationships with people and to benefit from that. And so that's my simple message to you today.